and welcome to this introduction to Boxcutter. So starting out, after having Boxcutter installed, you may notice that there are quite a few new preferences added to this version. I already have Boxcutter started up so that way I could show you what some of these toggles do. So you can see that at the top you can basically slim Boxcutter down to its bare essentials for pro users. However, I do like seeing all the text as well. We also have options to determine if you draw in wire, as well as the top bar padding at the top, and you can even space out the secondary set of elements even more. Under behavior, you can see that all the behaviors that are in the behavior panel of Boxcutter are also here for you to set up how you want your start experience with Boxcutter to be. Under shape, we have all the start experiences for the specific behaviors of bevel, circle, array count, solidify, and so on, as well as a new quad bevel option and straight corner flow, which will ensure that your quad corners look good. Under color, you can customize the color of every single box type, as well as change the wire width, reduce opacity in edit mode, and as well we have support for high DPI monitors. Under the key map, you can see that you can change the hotkey for starting Boxcutter. However, you can also start it using the icon in the T panel. Surface toggle will allow you to press Alt-W to cycle between cursor and surface orientation, which can be useful for getting cuts in those tricky places at the right orientation. There's also disable control and shift in edit mode, which has been added as a possible key that users are able to override. However, I keep this on by default because it allows me to use control click in edit mode to click and make selections. So before we begin, we want to jump over to the input tab, or actually the key map, and we're going to search for cursor. And under cursor, you want to choose set 3D cursor, and you want to set the orientation to be geometry. This is something that we were talking about in the last version in order to get the cursor orientation to orient correctly. But after setting that up, then you're ready to begin, so you can save preferences, and now we can get into talking about Boxcutter. Starting Boxcutter is as easy as clicking the icon in the T panel, or even pressing the Alt-W hotkey, and you see that we're already in cut mode with box under our default tool, meaning that we can drag and draw boxes and just begin doing our cuts instantly. There are of course many draw types, such as slice, that can be used for cutting things out. We also have an apply modifiers button, which will apply all the modifiers, making a mesh reel. We have the new inset that will simply push geometry in. You could use T to adjust the amount of inset being pushed. We also have join, which is able to make boxes that are joined onto the surface, with E being able to extrude the opposite sides in and out. You can get this into perfect orientation. And then there's knife box, which for this one we'll need to press Alt-V and turn on wireframe. So you see that the join box we made didn't solve completely nice. With knife cut, we were able to draw a loop through, and you can see this now is in real time, showing live. And we're in wire mode too, so we can especially see it, versus having the shaded view on top. We could press H to hide that. And you can see that knife is just useful for situations where you want to solve. For example, let's say we went to circle and we were in cut and we drew this cut. You can see that the solution for it isn't the most optimal. With knife box, you are able to go in and completely rewrite what happens there. And if we press Alt H and bring back our cutters, we can just move this anywhere down this line and it's taken care of. But once we put it out in no man's land, you can see that it's getting a solution given to us by something else. The final box is make box, which make box can be summoned just by not having anything selected. You can just draw things on the world. Notice that the moment that you start drawing a box, that cutters are instantly hidden. This is part of a fix that we had to do in order to take care of some bugs that are happening in Blender at this moment. But you can also draw make boxes on the surface and then use those boxes with something, say hard ops, to just do a quick boolean cut. So now to actually get into the tools more specifically, so now I press Control N and make a new file. So we've already went over the different types of cutters. Now we'll go over the different types of shapes that you have. So right now you have circle, you have box, which you should be fairly acquainted with. We also have N-gon. So if we look at this from the side, N-gon can be started by Control, click, and dragging. And if you keep holding Control, it does activate an angle snap that you can adjust on the fly. Backspace support coming soon. And then once you rotate the view, you're able to then extrude it. And so you can also work with it in a 3/4 view, where you just draw your shape out, double click, bring it down. And then of course you always have Shift to keep it live in case you need to make more fine adjustments on it. Now with N-gon, we do have a drop down at the end, which will have your snap angle, as well as presets that users can click on to quickly just jump between these without dragging. Sliders can get so irritating, especially when half the settings in between are settings you would never ever want. So the presets have been implemented. The circle also has the same thing, where you can draw a shape with, say, 6 segments or 64 or 32. So you see me continuously going up here in order to change the preferences, but we do also have the Control D Boxcutter helper, which you can use to help you on the fly. And the interesting thing is you can draw a shape, press tab to drop it, press Control D, and actually adjust these settings on the fly, helping you get your circle exactly where you want it before you apply things. You can even change the type, change it to a slice, change it to an inset, and these things should actually be taking place live. But that is pretty much what we're looking at here. And then you also have corner and center draw, which center draw for box is something that I felt wasn't needed at this time. So with box, we normally default to corner draw, which is just a little bit more organic feeling. Next to that, we have our modifiers. So you can actually activate modifiers along with the tool to preemptively have modifiers before even using the tool. In this example, I'm using array. I can press V in order to move this out on the axis. I can even press F to flip it. I can also press Y in order to change the axis to the Y, or the X, or the Z. So you do have access to that with the scroll wheel being able to adjust segments on the fly. Pretty soon widgets will be able to handle this, so you'll be able to do this stuff in the viewport similar to how we're handling in HardOps with the new dynamic array system. So we'll shift keep this live, rotate it just slightly. And the next one we'll go over is solidify. Solidify is good for whenever you want to just, I didn't have my shape selected there. We'll select our shape. Solidify is good for whenever you want to just frame something in, just like that. We'll go over here and frame our box. Just a quick little framing. And you can even adjust this on the fly by pressing T. So similar to slice, except it gives an inset in between. Using solidify in place of slice has actually given us the idea that maybe we need slice to actually have the ability to cut in between the mesh prior to the slice in order to give it more depth. The next one that we'll go over is bevel. So if we draw a box, you can see that it's pre-beveled. And you can even go under the behavior panel and set how you want this to behave. So for example, I will click the preset for 1, and now we can bring this in. So the other thing that's been added to Boxcutter that's worth going into is pressing Q during a bevel. For example, we press B to bevel this side, but if you press Q, you'll bevel all sides except the side that's flushed in, which is important. And so right here, you can see the new quad beveling system added into Boxcutter. Not something I particularly asked for. I wasn't really too picky about what's going on here. However, you do also have the option to turn this off, which means that we can bring back the classic bevel, which we argue internally might be a little bit more rounder and just a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. But the quad one's definitely better for selection and conversion, which is essential. So next to that, we have our orientation options. We've mainly been drawing using object orientation. However, we also have cursor. So if you set up your cursor to map to your surface, you should be able to shift right click in order to move this around just like this. And you can toggle this with Alt W. So moving your cursor around, like for example, let's say we had an angle like this and we wanted to work here, but we want to start off the shape and then come to the shape. It really allows for these sort of workflows. In fact, we'll go back into that again. It seems to toggle us out of it. We'll be expanding on that in a future update. But we do have fallback systems in order to prevent matrix issues, which were things that were experienced during the 7.11 release that we didn't expect, because orientation was somewhat hard mode, especially with an auto switching system that wasn't completely explained. Next to the orientation, we also have world, which I never use. This one's mainly used by Graybox, but object and cursor are the two you want to keep your eye on. If you're drawing boxes and they're just not oriented right, you may want to make sure that you're oriented to object and not world, because sometimes switching it to the wrong one can happen. Next to that, we have the option here to preserve left mouse click for viewport selection, which is also a pref in our preferences. This depends on how strangely you remapped your key map, but I usually keep this on by default because I'm always using the defaults. You can also change your mode here between destructive and non-destructive. However, right now we do have a safety in place where non-destructive will be preserved because of a behavior called preserve non-D. So if you truly wish to go into the world of destructively working with Boxcutter, then you may want to uncheck that checkbox, and then from here, every cut you make will be real, with the cuts that are not real being preserved. So that's just something important to keep in mind. However, most of the time I'm using this, I do keep it in non-destructive until it's time to apply things. Usually I apply things once I like it. And I always keep this checked because in edit mode, all your cuts are destructive. And so therefore you don't want to go cut in edit mode and then accidentally have your tool shift into destructive for object mode as well because of edit mode shenanigans. So up here is the play pause, which if you turn it off, you get a different type of mode that's actually a little bit faster for people with slower systems, where you have it kind of behave like it used to in 2.79, where you would just draw the box and then you would see the cut afterwards. However, no matter what computer I'm using, even if it's a little waffle, I'm always going to have instant drawn because that's just part of 2.8 now. So finally, in going over the settings, we want to talk about the destructive, non-destructive. We have that exposed in the top bar because for people doing videos or exposing their settings to someone, we want it to be clear what type of cuts that you're doing. And also to us for diagnostics, the more information we have seen up here, whenever people show us what's going wrong with Boxcutter, the more readily and easily we can diagnose it. So now going into the behavior, you have an option to set your default draw to be wires only and also thick wires. If we use thick wires, you can see that my wires are just a little bit thicker. If we close this, we can go under behavior where we have all the specific behaviors of Boxcutter. Active only is handy prior to the whole cursor addition, because let's say we had this plane. I'm going to use hard ops to convert it to wire, and we're just going to add some subdivisions just to make this a interesting plane. This still comes in handy as well, not to say that this button is antiquated, but if we orient this to the surface, let's turn on rotation. There we go. If we orient this to the surface, we have like a movable work plane. And we can actually use the orientation of this plane to draw our boxes through shift select. And this is something that I still use from time to time for really important modeling where I need my work planes to remain behind. So just to show that this still does have a place, and right here you can see the offset maybe was a little too close, or I could just press E in order to push this out. So that is explaining active only very quickly. Quick execute will make every cut a laser cut, instant laser cut. Laser cut is the process of just cutting through the mesh. So if you're drawing cut boxes and you just want to cut all the way through no matter what, cut it to nothing, this option is the option for you. Also useful for people using pins. The next one is apply slices. So whenever you make a slice, it's also non-destructive, meaning it keeps all the history with the slice. So if we take this slice and we tab into edit mode, we can see that it's now applied. In fact, I didn't want to actually show it to you in that state. Let's actually turn that off. Let me show you what it's like without apply slices. When you tap into edit mode, you see everything, and this can be a bit confusing. So for sanity's sake, we have apply slices, which is something I typically keep on by default. The next one is auto smooth. Auto smooth is usually on by default, but it ensures that every cut that you make in the surface has a nice smooth happening with it on the auto smooth. Nothing's worse than cutting in something and seeing that you have to auto smooth your cutter, because that's truly mundane work. Shift to active will ensure that whenever you draw a cut and you hold shift, the cutter is kept active. So even though we're in slice, we can move this around and still tweak this to our liking. And this should be the state even if apply slices is on, which it is, because that sort of behavior is important. Now, simple trace. Simple trace is intended to speed Boxcutter up on really high geometry models that aren't using booleans to create them. The thing about the way we work right now is that our raycasting system is used to optimize the mesh that's actually here. However, if we use simple trace, it'll actually use the actual mesh, which can be kind of interesting. Like right here, you can see I'm drawing where the circle actually isn't. So if I were to go in here and like try to draw a circle and we turn it to a red, we can get something like that because bevel's still on, by the way. I'm going to press Shift numpad 7 to orient to my cutter and just move that right into place. There's a couple of other ways I could better orient this, but for simplicity's sake, you can see why simple trace might be actually a very good idea. In fact, I'm gonna go here, change bevel to 1, and just say that, you know, I learned something over the course of this video. Also, I gotta learn to select my objects, but something like this, oh my God, I am blown away personally by simple trace. We will be expanding on this down the road because now I truly get it. Sort modifiers is a classic. Sort modifiers is something that we are implementing in hard ops and kit ops that will be coming in future updates, but sorting modifiers is an important part of the workflow until you don't need it. Sometimes you don't want your modifiers sorted, and that's also essential. Like for example, let's say we take this cube and we use non-destructive modifier mirror to mirror this, because do not use bisect, please do not use bisect. If we mirror this over and we want to do a cut just on this side, we can do that. However, we can also change, turn sort modifiers back on, do a cut, and everything will just pop over to the other side because the sort will fix that part of the timeline. So that's something that we're also planning on expanding on. I mean, modifiers is getting rather complex. So our approaches to it have to be something that's intuitive to both new and old users alike, and pro users and concept artists and vehicle makers and JAMA. We got to make sure it works for everyone. Under shape, you can set the default behavior of all the things as far as your surface offset, how small of a mesh it has to be to trigger laser cut, the amount of vertices required on your circle when you draw it, the amount of inset when you jump into inset, your array count, your solidify amount whenever you press T to add thickness. Whenever you press B during your draw to add bevels, you can adjust the width and the initial settings here. So this is something I would go into rarely, but I do have my initial behaviors perfectly fine-tuned to assure that every cut I jump into just works and doesn't have issues. So if you are needing to adjust your behaviors, this is the area to do it, especially for your starting, which you can also do in preferences. Under input, you can see that there's a drag threshold, which determines the amount of distance that you make before your cuts are being triggered. And then there's enable surface toggle, which is Alt W toggling between cursor and surface orientation, which can be handy. Under hard ops, we have the slice option, which will let you jump between slice materials by pressing M. One moment and I'll actually demonstrate that. So for this to work, right now we are in the shaded viewport. or solid viewport. And all these materials that I have here, as you see under viewport display, they have different colors. If I use the arrow keys, I could just arrow through them. So with slice, we'll jump into Boxcutter, choose slice, and if you press M during slice mode, you will cycle through the available materials in your scene. This was something that we added as of the last update. Now when it comes to getting help in Boxcutter, we did turn the workspace into a help area for now until we actually add our finalized help system that'll help you cycle through and find all the various options at your disposal for Boxcutter. So with that, we can actually go ahead and jump in this and finally make something using all these tools in action. So now that I've covered some of the basics of Boxcutter, maybe kind of badly, but I try my best. I didn't even talk about how you press D to start the Boxcutter pie menu when you're in Boxcutter mode, or the Control D Boxcutter helper. HardOps has had a helper forever, and it's been a big hit. People love the helper. So it's just natural for Boxcutter to get a Control D Boxcutter helper. So now that we've got the basics aside, I'm just going to take this cube, scale it out on the X, scale it out on the Y, S, C, scale it down, and then I'm going to Control A, apply to scale first, and then go in edit mode, Control R, add a loop cut, S, Z, scale this up, Control B to bevel this, and we'll just round that out. Of course, I cannot go a day without using HardOps. HardOps is just as essential to my workflow as Boxcutter. Doing a video of one without the other, it's just so difficult. They're so intertwined in my life. But that aside, continuing to use HardOps, I'm going to use its mirror tool to put a modifier mirror. I've been telling everyone, please use the modifier mirror, not bisect. Bisect you will regret. Use modifier, it's non-destructive. So we'll put a mirror on it, and we'll also put a mirror this way. So that way only this portion of the mesh is real. And so I'm going to press D, jump over to Ngon, look at it in top view, and we're just going to draw a cut like this, and then double click, bring it down, press Z to jump into inset, press tab to just lock the shape there, and we'll just press T to adjust the inset. And here we are with our first inset of the day, and you know, one good inset deserves another, so we'll bring one down here, press T to adjust the thickness, and then from here we see that the sharpening just maybe isn't catching everything, so it more likely is the auto smooth. The auto smooth's always at 60 when I see it, so using the hops helper instead of jumping to auto smooth in the properties somewhere, we'll just change that to 30 and continue our journey. So continuing with Ngon, Ngon is just rad. I love getting down with some Ngon. Right here, I'm holding control in order to activate the angle snapping. And we're just going to bring this cut down. However, I'm going to rotate my view so I can really get this extrude the way I want. And I'm going to shift to live in order to press R, Y, and rotate this the way that I want it. You know, we probably just want just a little bit in there. And so looking at this from the front, I also like taking Ngon and just drawing some little cuts like this and just working my way out the back. Of course, one good cut deserves another. When you're using Boxcutter, it's cut time all the time. There is no need for you to repress the hotkey to start Boxcutter whenever you're intending to cut, because I assumed that everyone's next move after a cut is maybe a cut for that cut or to cut even that cut. So continuing on, we're just cutting through, and I could be using laser cut, but for some reason I'm not. Right here, I'm just going to draw a line across, draw a line down, and then extrude that back, but I'm going to shift to live, keep that, so that way I can press D and then 1 to jump to box. And I'm just going to draw the shape while holding shift, which will keep the shape behind, and then I could just duplicate it a little bit in edit mode to create my railing. In fact, I could change this one, but these two pieces can't intersect and be a boolean shape at the same time. So maybe something like that. And then from here, we're in box mode. And so box is just like a little detailer to me. I enjoy taking Boxcutter for a spin. But inset also has proven to be very adept at being used on curved surfaces, which is something that I'm excited for, because the moment that I start using this on robots, people will definitely get what I'm putting down with this box. With Purple Box, in order to make it, we had to make every other box live in edit mode. And what I mean by that is that, you know, being able to draw a box like that, you know, right click cancel, being able to draw a box in edit mode isn't easy. The behind the scenes of how it was done via the transference of mesh data behind the scenes was just, it was amazing to see. Whenever I saw what was going on, I was like, we should probably abort this mission. However, Proxy wanted to continue on with it, and as a result, now you can see your cuts live in edit mode. So continuing on, just making these cuts, not even thinking, you know, just cutting, pressing B to bevel, holding it shift to live, rotating it a little bit, enough to get caught by that 30-degree threshold, SCZ, and we will move this over here. Actually looks better there. And so you could see that real fast using mirrors and Boxcutter, we're able to make this. And the cool thing with using modifier mirror is that I can cut all the way across the origin points. If you're using bisect, you definitely cannot do that. We're probably going to remove bisect in the next version if people can't stop. You know, I think it's crazy that we have a tool that people are told not to use, so we'll probably be removing that, or putting it under pro mode or a special enable for bisect to be an option or something. You know, let me know in the comments below. Should we get rid of bisect even though it's ruining lives all around the globe? It's just splitting families apart, pun intended. So another thing we'll do here while we're just kind of having some fun with Boxcutter is I'm going to use Q Blocker. Q Blocker's nice. There's some things I would definitely have changed with it because they're a little odd, but just being able to draw shape there is nice. Yeah, I've been meaning to do more Q Blocker in my videos. I mean, even though I could be using Gray Box for this, you know, Q Blocker is a thing, and it's important to be supportive of the community and help these products grow, because you know, it's not, you're not buying it for what you see it as now. You're investing in what you hope to see it as in the future. So right here, I'm going to press Alt X and bring up the Hard Ops mirror, and we're just going to mirror it on the Z, just make my life a little easier. And let's take this edge, just bevel it. That'll make my life a lot easier. And let's just take Ingon and start cutting in some angles. And I've just been making little gliders. And so I figured for this video, for our journey to Box Metropolis, we would start off with the glider and then eventually get to Box City. But you know, we built this city, and we have to build Box City, unfortunately, guys, unless you want me to just provide you a blend file of the city. We call it a day. Right here, I'm going to hold shift because I want to come back and actually draw a box, keep it live. And interestingly, it keeps this cutter live, and it also keeps the cutter that I'm modifying live. But the moment that I start doing another cut, they will disappear, which is good. But in the next version, we do hope to improve that and make it better. But we had some collection issues that kind of made things a little bit tougher. Right here, I'm just using a triple click to laser cut. So right here on the final point, I'm just 1, 2, 3, laser cut. And with the pen, that's actually a little more difficult. So when we add gizmos, we definitely plan to finish this adventure. I just hope you guys have a little bit of patience with us. You know, I've been writing everyone so hard. We were working on Christmas. We were working on New Year's. I feel like I'm a bit of a slave driver, which is bad. You know, I'm a black guy, but I'm always asking for more, and it shows in the tools. Every time a new feature comes together, the first thing I'll do is demonstrate why that feature was needed. So I'm going to select this shape, press Alt X in order to mirror this to the other side. Inherent mirroring will be coming to Boxcutter, but hard ops is a tool of systems, which is why it's recommended. And those systems are built there to support you at every aspect of your workflow. So to not use Boxcutter is to kind of eliminate part of my workflow. We can't have Boxcutter S sharpening. Boxcutter is just there for concept modeling. So with that, we got some wings on this thing, and at the top of the screen, you see that we're working in non-destructive, so everything is live. But let's say we wanted to apply it. Well, that's what this checkbox is for. We click that, we apply it, we can start scaling things up. We could have scaled it up even non-destructively, but I wanted to make things a little more real so that we can get in here and just do some cutting on the new reality of what's going on here. So we're just cut, 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 cut. And as you see, I'm just a big fan of just Redbox. Redbox was the first tool we had over in 2.8. It's the most important box, with purple box being the final box that we brought over. But we are in talks about pink box and black box. Black box will be something especially interesting for modelers trying to get an advantage. We've added so many boxes that modify the mesh, but we haven't added any support boxes, and that's something that I want to focus on in upcoming releases. However, the more comments I get about legacy features and how they miss them, the more we prioritize adding back in the legacy features. Right now, we're just trying to get back our shape edit mode. Right here, drawing got a little weird, but we just roll with the punches. Right, guys, shift numpad 7, look at it from top view, and here's our box glider so far. So the next thing we'll do is we'll use Cube Blocker again. I really like their snap system where you can snap, but it's a little strange, but I see potential in it. The moment I saw this tool, I wrote this guy and asked him if he was available, because I would have loved to have had this guy work with us for a version. I always feel like it's like a celebrity thing, celebrity guest. We would have been like, yeah, the guy from Cube Blocker wrote our gray box because I loved it so much. But instead, we just got our gray box into shape, and those things actually came together in like some of the last hours. I mean, I'm just modeling a cylinder. There's not a lot to say here, guys. Sorry about that. Just kind of went on a rant, but I'll put a couple of loops in there just to make the shading look a little better. Right here, I'm going to select this face, Control ++++, grow that out, and I just want to look at this from the side just a little bit. Let's just bring a box down into it. Let's bring an inset box down into it. Let's press O to offset it. Let's press T to lower the amount and apply that. Let's apply the rotation. Let's mirror this across itself. And now we have a little subsection we can work in here with our missile. Like, I love inset. I knew that this tool was going to be great, but I didn't think it was going to be this great. I mean, I love inset, you guys. I'm sorry. I shouldn't gush about tools on a video where I'm supposed to be presenting the tools and teaching you guys the tools, but I mean, sheesh. You guys tried these tools? Look, I'm gonna snap my cursor here, and then go under circle and bevel, and I'm just gonna draw a circle here, and we'll bring this in, and we'll shift to live, and we'll shift as snap selection of cursor, and bring that back out a little bit, and now we just have this bevel we can push in. But using inset is just, you guys gotta use it for yourselves. Right here, I'm gonna actually shift deduplicate, click this checkbox to apply all the modifiers, making it real, and then bring it over here, and then we'll mirror it over here. And so I've been playing a bit of Ace Combat 4 or Ace Combat 7 or whatever is the new Ace Combat, but I love that game. I actually found out I love planes. So I didn't know that, surprisingly. I didn't know I loved planes, but planes are cool. I'm going to insert a cylinder here. We're just going to put this here and put like a little radar dish. And you know, this video's gone on for a minute. I should keep things focused on Boxcutter. I was thinking in the back of my head, hey, I should do that radial array driver trick in this video. But that would be like 5 minutes, and I'll get comments of people saying, why don't you stay focused? So let's just stay focused here. I mean, I woke up early to do this video before my girlfriend woke up. Right here, what I'm going to do is Shift S, cursor to selected, and we're just going to, you know what, let's just use circle. Circle's a classic. And we'll shift it to live, and we'll shift select this and use a hard ops tool called reset axis, and just reset the axis to this other object's axis. So on the hard ops side, we have these things solved, but we definitely want to solve them on the Boxcutter side. Also, we need to lower down our auto smoothing, and we want to snap our cursor here, and we're just going to put a circle there for later, and we're going to take this in edit mode. First, snap our cursor to this object, then we'll take our circle into edit mode. We're just going to use spin. We're just going to spin it again because 360 is just great, and the auto merge is just, oh my god. The moment I discovered the auto merge, I was like, wow. Now we just need angle to be kept between alarms. We just need angle to be kept between it because, I mean, pretty much angle, you're only going to want to use 360 with that thing, unless you're Jonathan Lapel. So I'm going to press period and change this to individual origins, and we'll just scale those up individually just a little bit. Maybe not so much that we hide the bevel, but we can actually just press 1 and get rid of cutters. We can take this, let's just make it real. We'll take this, select this, Control P, and parent it. That way I can just select one object and scale it down. Had the biggest radar dishes in the game for a minute there, you guys. So Alt X, mirror this over, and now we are ready to get started here. So let's just take box. I'm just going to get a little more detailed with it than I was planning on. I know how much you guys like that. And we're just going to lower the bevel and give it some thickness, just using hard ops as a post op here. And let's take that, spin it, and spinning really needs to be 360. I mean, if Blender doesn't change that, I'm going to be creating a 360 version of spin that's highly destructive. But we do have a lot of interesting features coming to hard ops and Boxcutter in the future, in addition to what you see going on here. You know, right now we're on a fight to get back what we once had with Boxcutter, and then from there we start doing crazy ideas. But I can't stop with the crazy ideas even over the course of development. It just gets so crazy. So at the top of this, let's give it a little box pilot. You know, my initial one had a box pilot too. So we will just mirror that across itself using modifier. And the interesting thing about modifier is you use it twice. It knows you used it twice. It's not going to mess you up. Modifier is smart. Every time I was about to suggest something else that could be done to it to make it smarter, it was already done. You know, AR got it right the first time when I asked for it. But before the modifier, being the mirror tool became what it is, I did ask him, you know, hey, we should make a mirror tool that's more dynamic, where you click the axis you want to keep. It's like, why would someone need that when the regular mirror work? It's like, yeah, I guess it does work, but we could make it better. And that's the goal, is always to we can improve the workflow. You know, every complaint right here, I'm drawing boxes on the wrong surface. Every complaint we take to heart, and they get reviewed and they get went over with the team. You know, we discuss ways that we can fix these things. Like every complaint, you complain on this video about something you don't like, probably be brought up in the next team meeting. Select the right object. That really makes me wish we had a lock-on mode. For some reason, things are getting a little weird here. Let's see what that could be. Could it be that our scale's not applied? Ooh, apply to scale, things go bad. Let's click that, then apply scale. And then let's try that again. So scale matters. Scale will make things get weird. All right, that's not intentional, but I can roll with that. Keep that little additive there. As a reminder, I'll be looking into that later. And let's just continue cutting in our box pilot. We'll jump up to solidify, cut a solidify line in here. We'll hold shift because we need to move that over. I know that users miss the custom move transformation modes in Boxcutter. We do plan to bring those back. I also want to add in that right here I'm in solidify, but let's say I didn't want solidify. I could press T and then T again and it will remove it. I could press B, bevel it. I could press B again, remove it. I could press V, add array. I could press V again, remove it. So these are important things that I found needed to be added to Boxcutter in order to ensure that users are able to more readily get to where they need to get to without a whole lot of additional clicks or having to even reach for the keyboard if you're using a pen. But lately I've actually been using Boxcutter a little more with the Surface Book, and I'm very excited about the future of what Boxcutter will bring in terms of using it with touch and tablet and pens, and our incentives there for the 2.8 era. I think we'll be able to turn 2.8 into the ultimate sketchbook for hard surface with Boxcutter, and even do a couple of things to promote things in that regard, to push things in that direction. And this is something that I look forward to in the future. But for now, we're in the now. Now, Boxcutter. So right here, I'm just going to laser cut that out. And we're going to laser cut that out. And right here, we're just going to maybe not laser cut. I was about to laser cut, but it'll take out my my wedge over here that I'm working on. I just wanted to do a series of random extrusions for this video. You know, we could even Shift D, duplicate it, and use this for kit bashing, which is something I've been getting into lately. I'm like, wow, I need to really do more tutorial content about kit bashing and showing users how to turn their random extrusions and to scale them into something else and use them to create shapes. But here we are with our first box flyer here. And so right now, if we come out of here, we see that everything here is in the collection of collection where we put it just now when I pressed M to move it to the collection, just to make sure. Sometimes Q blocks get put in the scene collection, and I hate that. I really want everything to be put where I'm currently working, which is layer 1. In fact, putting things here is like putting something on layer 0 when you really get down to it. But now we can go to the layer 2 stuff, which I can use Shift A and just insert a collection instance of collection, which we're just going to call ship. You know, we're working so fast we can't even put the I in there. And so with ship here, I'm going to Shift C, Shift A, insert an empty of an arrow. Where is it? Oh, empty is here. So we have to hide this for just a moment so I can move this to the side. Now I'm back in business. And let's right click and actually make this thing bigger. And so all I wanted to do was just make the ship fly a little bit to end the video. So we'll put a transformation on here, and with the transformation we want to take this empty that's moving up on the Z. So Z location 0, 1, and rotation for this thing is going to be on the Y. So it's Z to Y. And we move this up, and the ship's going to rotate. If we turn on extrapolate, maybe we could change this to maybe 30 degrees. That way it's not such a rapid turn. So it's almost there. Oh, we put it in the Z. My mistake. There we go. So now we can do tail spins in the air. And we look underneath it, we see that we probably want to do one more layer of mirroring, or just even go back to the ship and just detail that a little bit, which I don't even want to mirror it. Mirroring is lazy, too lazy. We don't want it to be too samey, but you know, just a little bit of Boxcutter. Let me talk to you. Boxcutter, a little T thick, give it some thickness. Bam. You know, we could even come back with Ingon here. father Ingon. Just quickly draw a shape, press B, bevel it, T, solidify. And we can even use the Control D menu to change things about the bevel, like presets. If I wanted to make it smoother or make it simpler, you know, bevel chamfer basically. We can jump from 5 to 90 on the degrees, which usually I use 30, which should be in here. Coming to the next update, 10 will be removed, 30 will be added. But let's apply that, and let's go back to this layer, layer 2, where we're messing with our ship that's a collection instance, and we just detailed it. We're still working in non-destructive. So the next thing from here, really all that's left is to get a flight path going. So I'm going to just scale this curve up, Control A, apply to scale, because I don't want any wackiness, so it's always nice to apply to scale. And we're just going to just do some extrusions of the curve for a flight path. Maybe even use a little proportional editing to bring it back. And it's just something I always goof off with. I'm always trying to figure out fun things for new users to do that would not only get them acquainted with Blender, but result in a cool result that would improve their morale and give them more spirit to keep using Blender. You know, like, it's definitely important that we mitigate the defeat that users feel whenever things get difficult. Sheesh, I lost everything. What am I looking at? Alright, so back to this one. Our flight path is just too humongous, you guys. So we gotta scale it in. But we also gotta increase our view distance. There. Blender's gonna need us to increase our view distance with a couple of zeros. And if we take this and we select this and use Control P, we can just use follow path. Baby. Let's see how it goes. And right here I have a camera rig, but we're not going to be using that today. So I'm going to clear parent, keep transformation. I'm going to have to clear the track, which used to be a hotkey. And with that, we can actually get these empties out of here and just simplify our scene. And for some reason, it looks like our ship needs to be put back where it needs to be. So if we start, and we want this to take place over 300 frames. So under the curve settings, under path animation, we're just going to change that to 300. Has a really unnatural takeoff, but that's not the point here. Let's go back. Let's actually put the camera on the plane. And we're just going to have some fun here before we exit the video. Usually I exit the video you know, after the demonstration, but let's turn this into something. So looking at it in this camera, I'm going to press M, and I'm going to press Control B over the timeline to bind that camera. So this will catch this. However, this thing is going way too fast. This thing's taking off. So it's taking off like so. And then let's duplicate the camera, and let's just use track 2. And so with this camera selected, we can just bind it whenever we want. So I'm just going to go here and press M, Control B. And we're just going to duplicate this camera and press M, Control B. And right here, we're going to duplicate the camera, bring it a little closer, press M, Control B. Watch it get farther, duplicate the camera, press M, Control B, move a little further, press M, Control B. So if we look at this through the camera views, we can see our flight just taking off and the camera is just cycling between them and not even able to show because of the we need to put zeros 1 2 right here. In fact, all these cameras need to have their views adjusted. Let's see. I wonder if I can do this. You used to be able to do this in a previous Blender where you could just 1 2 right click, copy to selected, and also while we're here we might as well turn on our PP. Here we go. And it looks like it's already on for us. And we just want to copy to selected and copy to selected. And now all of our cameras should be looking fine. And if we turn off overlays, we can really see this thing, which it looks crazy because we don't have the context of the grid. And for this, I was intending to actually have us fly through like a box city like this. But, you know, this would be a good point in order to wrap up on this intro to Boxcutter, since I'm getting pretty far off topic. But with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this video, and I'll see you guys next